Do you hear me well? It's okay?
Oh, yeah. I can hear you great.
Cool.
All right. Pop out chat. Looks like we already got people in the chat. Oh, man. People notice that we're rolling. Looks like we already got people in the chat. Oop, I got to close that. Oh, man. People notice that we're rolling. See, file, window. Bring all the front. Come on, window. There we go. All right. Oh, hey, Greg.
Okay.
How are you doing, Mr. Greg?
Well, I'm fine. I'm fine. And you?
Oh, I can't complain. It's, what, Tuesday right now?
Tuesday, yeah. Busy Tuesday, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Lots of announcements, lots of things going on. Matthew Humphrey says my beard looks well fluffed. Let's see here. Let's hide this chat. All right. Holy cow, there's a lot of discussion going on before we even started.
Yeah.
So, Greg, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us what you do and why you're here.
So I'm from Switzerland, and I started the Burr project when I was getting my first printer, which was the Mark II S. And I purchased the printer in the idea to change the frame already. So I did know I will not like the frame, so I changed it. And so that was my first project, real project with a 3D printer. And it was for me, but I know I like to share stuff, so I shared things, and there we are. We have some frame now and big community, and yeah, it's quite crazy.
Oh, yeah. So just to summarize that, basically, Greg, you bought a Mark II, and you're like, man, this frame is wobbly. Let's make a better frame.
Yeah, exactly.
and because you made a better frame, you had to make all new parts to go along with it. So, and there's one right here. Now, it isn't a full bear because I've got this Bondtech extruder that you worked on, but I do have the rest of it here. And I bet you have a bear extruder somewhere to show people. So for everyone out there, this is one. There's multiple mods out there for this kind of stuff. There's I think the first one was Haribo, and then there was Zerabo.
Yeah,
and then there's Bear.
Yeah, yeah. There was Haribo. I think Haribo was not named directly Haribo. It was Mark IIX or something like this.
Yeah.
Then it becomes Haribo, then Zaribo, and I was not. Yeah, I saw stuff that we could improve on the Zaribo frame, and so I did the Bear.
I'm okay with this, and the Bear sounds cool because I mean we do have like every time you buy a Prusa, you get a Haribo bear. Is that like the inspiration, or you just like bears?
Yeah. Well, Haribo was already taken, so yeah, I like the idea of getting the little gummies in the name, so yeah, I went to that.
I'm okay with that. That's I've always been a fan of Bears. I live in Chicago, so our national or local football team is the Chicago Bears, so it works for me. Plus, there's little gummy bears logos. They're hard to show. The little end caps have gummy bears on them. You can see if I can get that on there. By the way, this printer is really heavy once you get the whole frame on there. But if I hide my face, yep, there you go. You can see a little teddy bear there. Little accents there. So my first question for you is, a lot of people ask, you know, why the 2040 V slot extrusion? So what was your idea going to the 2040 V slot? Because I know everything else used 3030, I think.
Yeah, and lots of people using normal standard T slot and V slot. So first, I did like a lot what OpenBuild was doing. I think they have a very good product, and They have very good mentality. I mean, they're doing regularly contests and pushing forward the community. And I think they're really good. And so first, and it was open source, not like Misumi and other things like this. So that was one of my first choice. Another one was that the fact that you have the V in the extrusion, you can print the part vertically and make the alignment tab also vertically, because you have not a 90-degree angle, but 45-degree angle. So you don't need bridge, and you have a very clean alignment tab for the parts.
That makes sense, because printing, like you said, printing a T-slot, you have to do a 90-degree angle to fit into the T-slot.
Yeah.
V-slot's a 45, so for us who have FDM printers, you can print it horizontally and not have to print everything vertically. And I noticed that on a few parts, like the Y-axis, you print it horizontally, and it actually works out great.
And they will align very well, because if you do it, you can do it with T-slot. I mean, you could add the 45-degree angle, it will work, or you can use bridges, but supports, right? But the support are not very accurate, so it's not as good as having 45-degree angle on the extrusion.
I think we can all agree on that, because printing, I would hate to have to print all these parts with supports. That would just be annoying.
And also the things that was cool with open builds is those extra aluminum plates.
Yes.
For the XAxis. It's make very easy to align and to square the printer, and it's very, very strong. So I really did like this idea from open build.
I have a box of 90 degrees here somewhere. You keep talking about your 90 degrees.
I have some, maybe. Yeah. I think you have more than me.
Yeah, I've got a few. I got more too. I had a local place make me some too, to see how nice they would work. But manufacturing in the United States isn't cheap. So one of these plates for them to make me was $10 a piece.
$10? Okay.
Yeah, out of steel.
Yeah. Out of steel. Okay. Pretty heavy then.
Yeah, it's a little expensive, but yeah, these are the 90-degree black brackets he's talking about. So these are used to support, if I turn this way, it's used to support the Z-axis, and it mounts on both sides. So when that's tightened in with the T-nuts, it's not going anywhere. Yeah, and are they made out of gold? No, they're made out of American sweat and tears. I'm going to stick with these LDO ones, because not only are they pretty, because you have, so one of the things that Greg has set up, which helps everyone a lot, is you have vendors that carry exactly what customers need to do the build. So all 3D makers, United States, you've got Black Frog PL and Rat Rig in Europe.
Yeah, and we have Maker Parts in Canada.
Oh wow, yeah, I forgot you added them just recently, right?
It's there since a long time now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the cost of the LDO plates, Akel. Good question, but they'll be coming in the kits, and I don't think the price is going up way too much. But I think they're definitely the nicest 90-degree plates I have ever seen. I have open builds 90-degree plates, and they're pretty nice. This is just on another level.
It's a level on top. Yeah. But Jason from LDO makes a lot of good work on the plates and on other parts. Yeah, the extrusion, I think everyone knows how good they are. And now we are working to make just a tight better all the quality of the parts. So Jason worked on the plates to add a little chamfer and to have exact same rendering than the extrusion and so on. So we are also searching some solution to improve the T-nuts now.
Yep.
And so, yeah, hope to have something to announce soon. But for now,
these black T-nuts right here that I have in my hand. These are the ones that Jason sent me.
Yeah.
They're so pretty.
You before me.
Well, I placed a big order with Jason. I'm like, I need all of these things and all of like, I need all of this so I like to have spare parts. And Jason's like, well, hold on, how many do you need? I'm like, I don't know, like 500, and I have 500. So I should never tell him a random number. So one of the other things that I love about the Bear project in general is that you're strict to the open source, the GPL, the same thing that Prusa does, the GPL 3.0 or whatever. Yeah. You do the same thing. So you offer everyone the Fusion 360 parts, you offer everyone the STLs, you offer everyone, if you go to his GitHub page, which I have linked in the description, you even go into some of the methodology, like here's why I make these, you know, certain shaped circles, that way they print better. And you go very in depth in making sure anyone who wants to replicate this or add to the project can without having to jump through any hoops and ladders, which is, I find to be phenomenal. That's the biggest thing I've seen, because there's other projects and I don't feel they give back as much to the user base as you do, which is tremendous.
Yeah, I think this is something, how can I explain that? Yeah, this is something I've seen too much. I think open source is very cool, is pushing forward innovation for sure. And we are better working together than everyone on its desk. But the problem is always the documentation. In a lot of open source projects, there is very small and low documentation. So for me, it was really important to make this better. And it's a support I'm using every day to help people. So it's not just something you do once and then don't use it, and just something handy every day. And even for me, I'm regularly going back to my documentation to see, oh, I forget which code I put there or stuff like that. So it's really something very, very useful for me. Yeah.
And one of the other things too on that open source part that you've done is there's a long credits list that you credit Prusa, you credit even Zerabo and all the other mods, and it's very welcoming. I mean, as one of the things that I love about the 3D printing community is that community part. And when people take the time to thank the other parts that inspired, or even you use some of their items, but just the inspiration, in fact, just to credit them for that inspiration is pretty nice too. And it's just, it's good to see. And it really helps solidify the project and what you do a little bit more in my eyes, just because we can see that you don't just care about making a cool printer, you care about everyone that helped and everybody that led to getting to some of the ideas you got. And you know, it's very nice.
All the ideas were not only for me, so I cannot take all the credits. I mean, it's normal, and I think that's really cool in open source to be able to do that, to share ideas, to take some part that we like and make it better, and improving all those stuff. It's really, I think it's really powerful. And 3D printing, it makes it even easier because you can just print the part at home. So it's just crazy. So it makes, I think it's really powerful. So yeah, having the credits, it's just normal.
Yeah, rapid prototyping credits. That's the Bear way. And what's also nice is you don't send new updates too fast to the wild. It looks like your project, you take more time with small groups that test the product first, and you test it, and then you like, okay, everyone else try it out, and then I'm going to keep iterating it until it's done. Like right now, I think so. You like your example, your XAxis and extruder are in 0.7 alpha.
Yeah, alpha, because I'm not ready with all the features yet. So yeah, I would like to add first Mark II's version, and once I will add the Mark II's version, I will need now to add the filament sensor, the new one, and then I think I will be ready to make like a RC revision. So release candidate version.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk about, since we just mentioned the XAxis, you've done some improvements to the XAxis. I mean, it's hard to show on camera because I'm using my wide angle lens here, but we definitely have these fancy, actually, wait.
Yes.
I knew I had an extra box of parts here. So this is an easier color to see, but he has these clamps, and you also have the small inlets to level the rods, and the built-in tensioner as well. So this slides out, and this little tensioner moves in. So you've made a lot of little improvements, and some of them are pretty big. So what was your design idea when you went and redid the whole XAxis? Because you had a different XAxis for a while.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the XAxis is just to look at how it goes. I mean, each time I was rebuilding a part of my printer or changing something on the extruder, I retensioned the belt, and I don't know, the belt was not in center, or was, I don't know, the motor was vibrating a bit more, or stuff like that. So I tried to isolate, looking at how the parts are mechanically interacting between them to see what can work and what cannot. So we like moving the extruder more closer to the bearings and also closer to the bed. Belts makes some improvement on the tension of the belt, and also generate less vibration and so on. So all those stuff, are small improvement, mainly because I just disassembled and reassembled stuff, and was not going in the same way as before. So I try to understand why, and then upgrade what I can upgrade.
Yeah. So what he's mentioned is one of the things this is why if you print a lot of people go, well, can I use the bare XAxis on this or that? So the bare axis only works with the bare extruder, and he did one thing that I haven't seen anyone else do, and it's hard to tell. Let me move my face out of the way. But as you can see, the alignment of the belt is as close as it can get to the motor. So the pulley is shoved in as close as it gets to the motor, so there's less chance of putting all the torque at the end of the motor shaft. So the bare axis actually lines the belt further back, actually right in line with the smooth rods, and everything is just in a nice straight line. So you kept the 20-tooth smooth idler from Prusa, which goes in here, or actually easier to show, inside the tensioner. And so it's a nice linear belt path on the top. So that way there's no twisting, no nothing. So you made a really nice belt path. And that's just little tiny improvements that kind of came throughout your experimentation of ripping the printer apart, which I noticed the same thing when I ripped my printer apart and tried to put it back together again. Sometimes it doesn't go back exactly the same way, but it seems with the bare stuff, everything is exactly in the same spot, because I have three printers with bare XAxises. So this one's a full bare Mark II 2.5, and then this is my full bare Mark III, and then I have just a Mark III with the bare extruder and a bare XAxis. Everything just kind of went in exactly where it was on all three printers. There wasn't a change. I didn't have to mess around to get the same alignment. It just seemed like I can put this idler exactly in the same spot every single time, just eyeballing it, and it's lined up every single time. So that's plus the tensioner. I'm just going to go back to the tensioner. So you have 3 millimeters of adjustment with this idler, unless you mess up, and then you start here, and you can really get like 17 inches of 17 millimeters of movement. But
my hits the tensioner if you make it out.
Yeah, so the original, I wish I could make room for my Mark III that's stock, but Prusa decided to put a tensioner that's built right into one of the weakest points on the printer, and also involves rotating the motor slightly, which actually lowers it slightly. So it changes the angle.
Yes, you have a lot of force on the screw here, so for a little arm. So yeah, lots of people are breaking this arm also. So yeah, that's the best. At first, I thought it was good, and I tried it, and I didn't like it. So then I moved to the other side.
Yeah, it's definitely nicer on the other side. I know the Gazerbo, and I think even some of the the clone printers had designs with this slide in idler side.
Yeah, actually, Veco from Zaribo took one of the first design of my XNs for the Zaribo projects.
Nice.
It's a remix of one of my oldest design.
I'm a fan of your old design.
At first it was with a 16 teeth idler, and then I moved to 20 teeth, and Zaribo kept the 16 teeth idler and started from here with my XNs. Yeah.
So someone just asked in the chat, why not both 16 millimeter pulleys on both sides? Why the 16 and 20?
I did test both, and I found the 20 much smoother. It's also recommended by Gates to have a bigger idler than pulley. So also the bearing are bigger, so it avoids filling the bearing too quickly. So, we had a lot of feedback with 16T idler that were wearing very quickly. So
yeah, I've burned through. I just actually, when I took apart my because I had a Zaribo XAxis on the blue printer back here that no one can really see right now. I took that apart, and the bearing was junk, and there was dirt and grease. It almost had looked like it internally just ruined itself. So I agree that the bigger bearing is definitely a lot safer.
It's a feedback I had a lot of times, so I decided to change to go back to 20 teeth. And at that time, I didn't understood all the implication of how you have to tension the belt and how the belt pass has to be. And it takes time to learn things like this sometimes. So yeah.
Ooh, someone just asked, why not an INSI change to move the door on the outside?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that since a long time. I think Zaribo has a very well cover for the Rambo. I think it's a nice design. Having door inside is handy when you have printer next to each other. So typically in the configuration of the Prusa form,
or in an enclosure too.
Sorry?
Or in an enclosure, because if you have a tight enclosure, you can't.
Yeah. Also, you can on the burr you can unscrew the top hinge, slide it up, and then you can remove the door completely. So it's really handy.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You have this little connector piece here.
Yeah, this one you just untight this one with the M5 screw. It just slide up. Then you can remove the door, and you have access to the electronic freely.
Someone just asked, so Greg's using the same bearing as Prusa, and the one that died on mine was actually a 16 tooth bearing, the smaller idler. So they're not seeing the death at Prusa Farm because they're using the same one that's on the bear. So it's 20T here. The pulley is still 16, but there's no bearing on the 16 side. So, and let's see here. And tooth versus smooth. That's always a good question, but that one's, I think that's personal preference for me. I ran toothed, and I can't find a good quality toothed idler, so I always go back to smooth.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think toothed are better, and this is what Gates recommends too. Under 14 teeth, they recommend to use teeth instead of smooth.
Yeah.
But the problem is that quality is very low on those toothed idler, so it make it worse. And so I went back to smooth one too. And I'm waiting my E3D toothed idler to test those. But yeah, I found them just a bit too wide, so I'm not sure exactly to use them. But I have to evaluate them for sure.
Yeah, someone just agreed too that it was easier to find a better smooth. And when I took apart that Zerabo XAxis, they had the 16 tooth, because I actually had it as a 16 a toothed idler, and I didn't notice, but I was moving the XAxis back and forth, and it was wobbling, and it wasn't because it was the center was off. It literally was the center, the extruded toothed profile was off center, and they just drilled through it and popped a bearing in it. I'm like, this is why I don't like. They don't make good idlers for, or I guess I should say driven pulleys is what they're technically called, but they don't make good idlers for 3D printing. It's just like, it's like garbage, or you can get the nicer E3D ones now, finally.
The other problem is also the flanges of the idlers. The belt is touching the flanges and gets grabbed during the move, and it twists the belt, it wobbles. And that's our problem also. This is also visible on smooth idler.
Yep.
And yeah, the E3D looks like they solved that. So I'm curious to know how it goes with those.
Yeah, because I think I have one printer with the orange one here has the E3D parts on it. Okay. Let's see here. What is the compatibility for the XAxis and new extruder for the MK2S? So we'll jump into the new Mark 3S's and Mark 2.5S's at the end of the discussion.
Yes.
So stay tuned for that, Nick. Let me jump back to the chat and see, because we actually talked about that. We actually had kind of a game plan, which I normally don't game plan too much, but I wanted to stick to just a little game plan. We were going to talk about as much of the design process as possible, and then jump into like what's next, and then talk about, you know, all these new things and other stuff. So let's see if there's any other questions that pique my brain from the chat here. Does the XAxis bear mod work with the new Bondtech extruder? It does. There's a, I have it somewhere on my desk here, is a bear. So Greg went in and he quickly, it was actually pretty quick, but you made and tested a new carriage, and the carriage fits on the back of the Bondtech extruder, and that carriage works with the Bear X-axis. So you can use, this is actually what I'm doing right now, is running that same Bear carriage on my Bondtech extruder with the Bear X-axis. So totally possible, because if you didn't know, and we'll talk about it later, Greg helped a lot. He actually helped, I think, the most in the design process, besides the guys from Bondtech. And I think we said a couple, I said like 3 things. I really didn't. I know people like to thank me. I'm like, everyone thank Greg. They went back and forth on science and stuff, and I'm like, I have nowhere to argue, because I have no idea. Like, I know this one works good. You know, my Bear works great. So whatever he says, it's good.
Yeah, it was crazy how quick they. Yeah, I suggested to use the Bear X-axis.
Yes.
And I think in less than a week they released something that was compatible with Cerebro, with Stuck, with Bird. That's crazy.
Yeah,
because in 1 week it's very short.
It is, and it was a lot of really good input really fast, and I'm just sitting there watching it, because I know when to be quiet. I like to talk a lot, but I know when to be quiet. And during most of that design process, the only things I ever said were, "That's a good idea," or I just shut my mouth and like looked at the stuff and was like, "Yeah, this looks great. I have no complaints." So you guys figure it out. That's the rule, kids. If you ever are in a room with people who design stuff for a living and you don't know anything about designing, don't say anything. Just let them design.
Well, and then sometimes simple idea comes from people that don't know all the details, and they have a different view. So yeah.
Yeah, we do, but I'm usually wrong. I'll admit that now. I'm wrong a lot. It just, now I listen more. So I listen to what all the smart people say, and then when all the smart people agree that this is right, I'm like, yeah, that's right. You guys are, yeah, I agree. I knew that too. So let's move to we talked a little bit about the frame. If you guys haven't seen, like I show this little example every time on here. If you try to wobble this frame, it actually doesn't wobble. My whole table shifts. So the table I'm on actually is moving, and the bear frame. There's so many things I want to say at one time. The bear frame doesn't actually move whatsoever, and it's pretty ridiculous because one, going from the Mark III to this, there is a weight increase. It feels like a professional printer. Not to say the Mark III and other printers aren't professional printer, but coming, like you did photography, and one of the things that used to, the mark of a photographer back in the day was how big their camera was, how heavy their camera was, how big their lenses were, how heavy. This is like that. When you buy an object that has some heft to it and it's so sturdy, nothing bends, you're like, oh yeah, this is a machine. That is how I feel when I threw this frame on. I was like, oh, it'll probably be a little sturdier. Nope. It doesn't move. It doesn't bend. It doesn't twist. You can yank it off the table from. I don't recommend. I surfed on one on YouTube one day. I don't know if you guys missed that video. I literally stood on a bear frame, and it was my taller modded version, so it was even more likely to bend and fall over on me. And I wiggled it with my 700-pound body. I mean, it's pretty amazing how durable this is. So one of the other things,
the first design was using design like the Mark III, actually.
Really?
The first was the Alpha Grid, which was the version 1, and I was still using the frame, the vertical Z aluminum plates from Prusa.
Yeah,
and and when I built it, I said, still not strong enough. Have to do it better.
Yeah, so that same test I'm doing right now, guys, grab your Mark III and just grab the top of the frame and then do this with your finger. The frame will move. I mean, it looks sturdy, but and I don't recommend, don't stand on your Mark III. I do have an extra Mark III frame over there. Maybe one day I'll try it, but if you do this with your finger, it moves. If you put your whole hand on here and shake this, your table will break before this thing bends. So another point is the extruder. You spent a lot of time working on the new extruder. So the 0.7 alpha extruder has, I think I caught the bear after you'd already released the 2.0 stuff on the frame and the y-axis. And then you got this, I think I was jumped in, it was like the 0.5 version x-axis.
You were in the middle of 0.5 and 0.6.
Yes.
I think you got some early 0.6 version. You got, I think, the first one.
Yep, I do. I have the 0.6. So there's a new one, guys. You have to upgrade.
No, not yet. 0.7 is inside dev branch for now, so I'm working on it.
All right, take your time.
Yeah, I like to take my time.
So the extruder, though, I think you had probably the most design changes. Things from when you try to align the motor gets automatically aligned. There's none of that wobble. That's something we discussed even with the Mark 3S. The Mark 3S. There's still a chance to misalign the extruder because there's still some movement in there. You also spent a lot of time working on the air intake from the hot end cooling. A lot of time making sure the motor was shifted towards the belt, so that way there's less chance for vibration. You also lowered the motor right closer to the center.
Yes.
So there's just a lot of work done there. How did that design process go? Was that an easy one, or was that probably something a little bit more?
Extruder is really long. I didn't know that before starting. It was the most interesting job between the extruder and the frame. The extruder is very interesting to develop, and also it's small changes by small changes, because also there is a lot of things in a small size. You have the belt, you have the bearings, you have the fans, you have the motor, you have the gears. There is a lot of things, and so it's a long process. Also, I had a lot of help from the Discord community, the Six of the Wasteland, where those guys were searching for improving print quality, solving some issues, and I did a lot of reading there and asked for help. And yeah, people were very friendly, came with good ideas, and then I tried to put all this together. But yet it's really small step by small step to achieve this. I think the hardest one was the two clamp on the back of the carriage with the belt in the middle. That took me a lot of time to make it.
So what he just mentioned was the fact that, so here's the back of a Bear carriage. So this, it looks kind of similar to a Prusa one, minus the fact the belt is perfectly straight. So he actually set it up so that way it's in two parts. So there's a small little piece and then another piece here with a little U shape. And what this allows you to do is if you want to take, you know, you want to pull anything out or work on anything, instead of taking on a normal Prusa, this is one piece, you can't do anything. The cords are stuck inside of this carriage back plate. With yours, you can just take off the bottom plate. You can take the Noctua fan off or anything off, really, and just run all the cables out and then run new cables in. So if you break a fan or something, you don't have to remove, you know, your entire extruder, which is what you would normally do on your Prusa Mark III. And then another benefit, which I found out the other day, because I've been messing with this thing and I even changed the belt, is once you pop this thing off, you can remove the whole belt, put a new whole belt on. And again, that's another thing, this thing just gets in the way on a regular Prusa when you have one whole piece. You just kind of like clamshell it out because it doesn't really fit down the wires. It's so thick. You just kind of like move it out. You're trying to kind of mess with the belts in there. It is probably one of my top 5 Bear improvements, along with the 100 other ones. But as someone who, like, I take my printer apart a lot, and I change and I test a lot of things. So someone who tests a lot of things, like, I just want to put a random new belt on a stock Prusa, changing your belt is a 2-hour-long surgery, unless you're like me, who's found little ways to, like, you know, if I shove a tool in here just right, I can get a 45-degree angle. I get my fingers in here, I can rip them out, most likely damaging the belts and doing all this fun stuff. But with yours, it's like, okay, I just pop this back plate off, pull it off, and then I can change the belt. I don't even have to put the back plate back on. And I can check my axis, make sure everything's nice and aligned, and then just, if I feel like it, I can pop this back piece on, because it doesn't stop me from testing the printer on a regular Mark III. If I take that piece off and I don't screw it back in, the printer falls apart. So
yeah, I was having the same problem. I was tearing down my extruder 2 times a week when I was developing it. So at some point I said, no, I cannot continue to remove all those wires just to change something. So yeah.
And then there was the other fun thing is, so a lot of people don't know. So when the Mark III first came out, it had its laundry list of issues. One of the biggest issues on the stock Mark III and the B3 or something like that, and then R1 and R2 extruders was the hot end cooling. And that's where you took it another level, and the cooling was improved heavily. So I just posted some images today because, you know, everyone's like, well, what about the Dyson thing? Does it work? And there's a candle, and the candle, when the fan is on, is sucking air this way. But if you put the candle on this side, you would expect the candle to blow away. The candle actually sucks back into this end, because the little Dyson port, which you didn't add, actually causes the opposite of what you want. It's not adding more airflow and using that Venturi, you know, science math. It actually makes a little vortex and sucks air back in poorly. It is better than the R1 and R2, but not by a lot. So
yeah, I took a lot of time around that. Again, like the XAxis, just taking time to look at how things are going and how things are working together, and I could find a Dyson hole was not working for me, so I asked the community if people can test it, if it works for them, and the result was it's not. So then I prefer to drop a feature than having something that barely work. So yeah, so those kind of iteration is what I did to develop the burr extruder. And I tried recently to do some Venturi effects and stuff like that with the only on the cover of the extruder, but not without having a hole in the front. And to my test, it was like working, but some guys on the Discord server did heavy testing with it and found that it's not really that better. We did some simulation also with a guy called KLMX that helped me a lot with this. And we found that it was creating a bit of back pressure, like sucking the air around the outside, but it was not enough. So I prefer to drop something that will work, maybe 1 on 3, so that's not interesting. But the version 07 will still improve a little bit the cooling by a new design of the cover, but without Venturi hole.
I'm okay with that, because if you had issues, like, again, that was, I like to bring it up because the original Mark III's long list of issues when it first launched was clogging. A lot of people had clogging issues, and a lot of people thought it was the heat break, the custom heat break from Prusa. It was the overheating of the motors. I mean, those are all things that are bad. You don't want an overheating motor that sends the heat to the Bondtech gear and it makes your filament a little spongy, and you don't want the Prusa heat break is different, and it does increase a little bit of the internal pressure. But it wasn't until, I don't know who figured it out, because I didn't hear about it till I started digging into the Bear project, was the fact that the airflow was poor. So the Noctua fan, one, is underpowered. Mm-hmm. So with the low, from my understanding, the low static pressure isn't strong enough to break all the turbulences that are created inside of the poor design of the hot end. So when the air is blowing, it's just spinning and hitting things, and it's becoming a wall more than just flowing out through. And then Prusa came out with the R3, which did help with cooling, but not in the way they thought it was helping. Mm-hmm. It did add more air, but backwards, which is funny if you do the candle test. If you have a stock Mark III, do the candle test. It's hilarious watching the fan suck in air this way, and then the opposite side suck in air, and then it's all blowing out the Venturi hole. Versus, you'd think the Venturi hole is sucking more air, and a whole bunch more air is coming out this end. And then you guys even went far enough to recommend a better fan, the Sanon fan, versus the Noctua. And after all that, people were, I think I ended up posting it just to the regular Mark III group, and people who couldn't print at 0.5 millimeters because it would clog could now print at 0.5 millimeters because it wasn't clogging. Just changing the fan, and the same thing with the Bear. They're able to print with out the clogging issue, which had always been kind of that little dark spot on the Mark III. Like, why can't I print at lower layer heights? What's the issue? Yeah. So
I hope we will have some soon Noctua that is really made for that. That would be wonderful, I think.
There really should be. I mean, the Noctua is lower power, it's quieter, but also has that special design in the blades that make it a little less noisy. And I feel I've seen other case fans, but I've never seen any other 4010 fans that are any more powerful with that design to be quieter. So
yeah, Noctua is designing, in fact, the fan in two modes. Some are made for cases, and some are made to cool heatsink or CPU and stuff like that. And typically in the 4040 size, there is only one made for cooling cases. And so to cool down cases, you need to make it very silent, but because it will be in front of the case. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to have a lot of pressure because you have normally nothing in front of it. So, but Noctua doesn't have a 4040 fan that is really made for pressure. to go through heatsink, and I would love to see that because they are very good.
Yeah,
I know they can do something very good.
Yeah, the fans are amazing. I mean, I used to put Noctuas on my Mark IIs, and I hadn't noticed, but that kind of going back to the 602 extrusion thing, which we haven't talked about, but that little basket weave pattern, I was getting that basket weave pattern on my Mark IIs when I swapped them to that hybrid. It was like a Mark 2.3 extruder that someone had designed, and I was starting to get that same look as my Mark III, and a lot of that, it seems to be the cooling. So kids, don't remember, Noctua fans in the 40 size are made for cases. They're not made to go through heat sinks. That's, if anyone takes anything away today from this conversation, that's the thing to take away from this conversation.
Yeah, I think cooling is really critical. I mean, we are pushing something strong on something melted, and it's not like a syringe where you have some where you are controlling really what you are pushing. Here, it's really different. We have to fight with a lot of physics of the melted plastic, and cooling of the hatan will clearly improve print quality, but will also increase bridging. It can increase stringing. It can increase precision also of the prints. So I think it's really important.
And it definitely was nice because I literally just, someone said water cooling. I would love to throw a water cooler on my Mark III. I'm that weird kid that's like, man, but the nice thing about the Sanon fan's like $10. So for those of us who just want to improve quality a little bit, and also allow us to print at lower layer heights and maybe not get those clogs, $10 is a very reasonable amount to spend to go, is this better or not? And the thing is, you're not going to tell there's this huge difference because you're just printing, you're just looking at a print. The prints aren't like, oh man, I went from this really crappy print to this amazing print. But if you print at lower layer heights, like you're printing mini figs or whatever, where that pressure becomes an issue, you get heat creep. And to keep the heat creep away, you need that airflow. So for specific cases, it's amazing. For the things like if you only print at 0.2 millimeters, you're not going to see a huge benefit, but I guarantee you won't have as many clogs, and you'll also just have way better cooling in general, which is never a bad thing. It's never, it doesn't get worse. So for $10, nothing gets worse and everything gets better. You just might not see it. Because again, it's something that, you can't just stick your face in there and go, yep, that's 20 degrees colder. No, yeah, you can't. Let's see. Peter Lockwood, good question. Is there anywhere you can buy the Sanon with connector? All 3D makers had them. They're sold out. Like Sanon fans are super rare right now.
Yeah, I think the community took all of them.
It did. And now there's a Delta fan that Matthew Humphrey found.
Yep.
That's the same spec. So there's a Delta fan on DigiKey. I don't know the model number. Someone probably knows it, and they'll probably post it in the chat. But there's a
I can do it.
But yeah, there's a Delta fan it's super awesome too, and and I will say there's one negative. It is slightly louder, but it's still under 35 decibels, so it's still below the hurting your ear sound, because everyone remembers that little tiny 30 millimeter E3D fan that you can hear it 3 rooms away. If you walk away from this, you can't hear it.
Yeah, the nozzle fan is more noisy than the Sanon.
There we go. Someone posted it. Yep. 5 volt, 3 wire, 0.2 amp, 1 watt. Yep. 8.15 force cube CFM. So that is correct. 30 decibels. 40 by 10. That looks about right. So we've talked about what you've done, but what's next? What is the next thing you want to get done on here?
On the burr. I think that one of the upgrades I want to do is the filament sensor for the new version we heard about today. And then I want to make a little improvement on the frame with some little improvement, mainly on the y-axis, on the Z motor mount, I think, also. Those will be small. And then I will do a big job to try to introduce linear rail in an efficient way. So that's the future.
I am 100% for linear rails. Anytime someone says linear rail to me, I just get so excited because I love the idea of linear rails. As much as I really enjoy smooth rods and stuff, you can't really beat linear rails. They are meant for precision.
It's
also a little quiet.
Very difficult. Yeah. It's very difficult. A lot of people have tried, and it's not that easy to align.
No.
And you cannot put them on an extrusion because an extrusion can have more warping than what the bearing can support. So it's quite difficult to do. But I have some idea. We'll see if I can do it.
If not, you can just make a super, CR20 with extrusion everywhere.
Yeah,
because extrusion works great.
I think on the y-axis or x-axis, it might be interesting.
It's cheap too. It's extrusion, but you have to switch to Delrin wheels. So those are a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, you have the Delrin wheels, you have the bearings, you have the extrusion. It's not that cheap, but yeah, I think we can do it. If I cannot make it with linear ray, I can mix with these sets. But the X-axis will really have a linear ray because it will be much stiffer. That's the biggest point today, I think, on the Prusa printers.
Yeah, if you guys can't see, so even though these are 8mm smooth rods, I can still flex. So it's really hard to see on camera, but you can actually bend and warp, especially the bottom one here, because it doesn't even take much pressure and the extruder moves. So let me see if I can. So hard when I get I should get the 50mm on here and be like, look at this thing zoomed in at 100%. I'm going to hide back here. And if I just wiggle the wire, I'm just grabbing the wire bundle, and you can see the whole extruder moves up and down because it's actually flexing the rod. We are at the deflection point for 8mm rods with the weight that we're doing. So, the smooth rods got to go. And throwing 10mm or 12mm smooth rods isn't going to help. We're just adding weight at this point without adding. You're still going to have the louder linear bearings. You're still going to have alignment issues. So
maybe on Z or the y-axis, it can be okay, I think, but much bigger one, 10 or 12mm. I think it can work. It can be as good as linear ray for what we are doing, I think.
We just do 20mm rods all the way around. You heard it here first. The Bear 20. That's what we're going to call it. The Bear 2020. 20mm rods on the X, on the Y and Z. They'll never bend.
Never.
Please, nobody ever make that printer. But I am patenting the Bear 2020. Because that sounds really cool. Sounds like a beverage that would have been made back in the day with MD 2020. And if you're not from America, MD 2020 is just a good joke to say out loud anyway.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's, like, from my point of view, I think the only things I've seen that would be that even need an upgrade is, you don't have a Y belt tensioner yet, at least not an official Y belt tensioner.
Yeah. No, that's a bigger problem, but I think we have good optional parts from the community that works well. So
I have it on here. It's nice.
And I like it because it also makes the community participates to the printer. But yes, this is something I really want to fix soon.
But we'll throw over to the Mark 3S. They did add a Y belt tensioner to the Mark 3S, and they actually attached it in a very intelligent spot. They put it right where the belt attaches, which is that's actually smart. That's probably one of the coolest things I've seen Prusa do creatively in a while. It was something I wasn't expecting. I was like, why belt tensioner directly connected to where it connected? Oh, that's genius.
Yeah. We had few designs that are similar like that in the community of the burr, but yeah, the way Prusa did it, it's quite nice. Yeah, I like it.
Okay, so we talked about the design. We talked about a little bit of what's next. So we don't want to give away all the secrets because it's fun having surprises. I don't want you to be like, let's share it all. No. You also helped a lot. We kind of mentioned a second ago with this guy, the Bondtech Prusa extruder, which is pretty beautiful. And we talked about earlier, Greg spent a lot of time with the air intake here from the cooling fan for the hot end. You spent a lot of time making sure that there wasn't any hiccups in the airflow. And
the buttons.
The what?
The cooling of the heat break under the extruder also.
Yes.
We did a lot of work. Yeah.
Ooh, can we compare? So I don't really feel it's a fair comparison. There's two different use cases. If you have a Prusa and you just want to spend $120 maximum, would I recommend the Bondtech extruder or would I recommend a Bear? And I would go Bear. Just replacing this extruder doesn't fix a lot of the other shortcomings of the Mark III. Things like, I don't know if you guys watched me change parts the other day, like I was changing the threaded rods out. It's so convenient on this frame. And your foundation, I feel, is more important moving forward. Because again, if there's any upgrades to Prusa, it can still go on this printer. You can put the stock X ends and put the Mark III's extruder on here if you really just want to try the Mark III's extruder. It doesn't stop you from trying new things. It doesn't stop you from doing stuff, but it's a great base, and the extruder does a fantastic job. There is print quality improvements moving to the Bear extruder than from the stock Prusa extruder. Now, if you already have this and you're like, well, what's next? Or, I don't want to have a bigger frame. Like I have a perfect case, perfect enclosure where if I made it any bigger, it wouldn't fit. Sure. Spend your $100 and get this. But they're not the same thing. This is a geared extruder. So this is 3-to-1. The Bear isn't. So right there, we have a difference there. So we're going to use a smaller motor. It's going to be a little bit lighter. You're going to get a little different extruding thing, a little bit different extrusion look. So I wouldn't compare the two. I would say they are two different answers to two different people. So if you have $100, about $120, I wouldn't go this first. This is my first recommendation, not with this extruder, but with a regular Bear extruder. So two different answers for the same thing, but with, if you have $220 though, we'll talk about that, but it is a very minimal thing. I mean, and that is the one thing is, if you want more Z height, it's not that hard to make this Bear taller. You can't, if you add this on there, you can't make the Bear taller. So if you're a person like me who loves modding your printer or, just modifying in general and testing and tweaking, this is way more fun than an extruder. I like both, but I'm always going to say the Bear is the better option because I'm not going to lie to people and be like, this is the greatest thing in the world. It serves a purpose, which is for people who want better extrusion and printing at lower layer heights. Again, that's going to be its big benefit. But it's not like night and day. You're not going to switch from the Bear and switch to the Bondtech and be like, oh crap, why did I ever do the Bear? No, you're going to be like, pretty close.
I think the Bear is also very easy to swap from the Prusa extruder.
It is.
This one needs a bit of tweaking, and it's a bit more advanced.
So let's see here. Oh, Sven, he just did the Mark III Bear this weekend, and it's actually a really fun build. So it reminded me, like the build process reminds me of when I first got my Mark II's. There's a little bit more in building it. Like the Mark III, you just slap on some extrusion and you're basically done. What is it, like 4-4? So we're talking like, 32 screws and you're done. That's the frame. With this one, you grab a T, you make sure you have a nice square. You take your time, you build it, you align it. Coming soon will be multiple colors. You'll get purple and green and blue and whatever. So you'll be able to customize it more to whatever you want it to be. Plus, there's new parts and new part iterations that I feel are much better compared to stock Prusa. So the build process is just more fun. It's very enjoyable. I would say it takes me about 3 hours to get the frame the way I want it, plus getting the Y-axis on. Once you get the Y-axis on and aligned, everything else is pretty quick. But taking your time, it's a really fun process. So
yeah, I think it's a bit difficult to square the frame. I hope to find a solution to make this easier later.
I do have the fancy custom LDO ones with the screw holes in it. Now, it didn't make it square perfectly, but it definitely helped get it in a shape to then align. So that was fun, but I don't think that's the solution either. It's just another. Jared said, someone said that there isn't a huge benefit making the X-axis lighter on the Prusa since X and Y are equally acceleration limited. So, I mean, there a Cartesian printer lowering the weight of the extruder isn't this massive change. You can remove 100 grams from your extruder, and it's not like, one print is amazing compared to the other. What you will see, though, and there's just always a benefit in lightening things. So for me, the extruder will be more nimble. You should see less ringing. You should see a lot less vertical banding because a lighter extruder is a lot less work. So the motors will run cooler. The printer in general will just be snappier. Again, it's not, again, a lot of these things people might think of as a night and day. Like you'll lighten the extruder by 100 grams and all of a sudden it's printing completely different. It's going to print pretty similar, but it has advantages that aren't, just on the print itself. So, let's see. And so anyone can buy the parts for the bear upgrade in Europe. Yes, Francesco, there are 2 locations in Europe. You've got blackfrog.pl and ratrig.com. So Evan just goes Bear Core XY. Greg, will there be a Bear Core XY?
Yes, I'm not. I see issues in Core XY designs, so it's not my target for now.
Yeah, there's. I follow. If you guys want something that's kind of like the Bear project, and Core XY, look at the Railcore project. It's the similar kind of ideal where a whole bunch of really smart people made an open source Core XY printer, and they continually iterate. Now, the one bonus with the Railcore, and I consider this a big bonus, is 2 of the main people who use that printer also own fabrication companies. Yeah. So they're pumping out aluminum, machined aluminum parts constantly. So they're replacing printed parts with these machined aluminum parts. So if you want a really gorgeous looking Core XY that's 300 by 300 by 300, that prints 0.02 millimeter layer height and has a bed that's MiG-6 machined aluminum bed with magnets in it, so you can still put your magnetic bed on. Take a look at the Railcore, and it's open source. Tony is one of the guys I talk to a lot. He's a super smart guy. He's like the American Greg. He's always testing and tweaking, and I'll pry his brain. I tried to bug Greg too much because he seems busy, but Tony, I'll bug because Tony also plays Dungeons and Dragons, so I bug him about other stuff too. So, any chance they sell those in Europe, they will ship to Europe through somebody else. Somebody else sells them to Europe, or they might started selling them to Europe now. There's also the Rat Rig, the
V-Core, I think.
Yeah, the V-Core. That's also a really cool open source Core XY. So the Core XY community actually has quite a few really good Core XY, it's open source projects that are very similar. And if you want more printed parts, kind of like the Bear, that would be a rat rig. The Railcore has far less printed parts.
I want to add more aluminium for the parts.
That's the one thing I love about rail. Like, I want to buy a Railcore, but we're in this. So a lot of people ask me, am I getting one? I'm in the group, and I actually participate a little bit in their group. I am waiting for the Duet 3. So it runs Duet 2, and Duet 3 has already been announced. And I think it's going to release at Murph. So I don't want to buy a $1,500 Railcore with a $200 board and be like, I need to buy another $200 board a month later. So I'm halting my brakes. Like, I am ready to push the button and buy a Railcore, but I'm like, they're gonna come out with a brand new board it has way better drivers and all this other stuff. So I gotta calm down, which I don't like doing. So I just keep buying Bears and I keep building them. That appeases me. So here's someone that had a good question. They go, did you reach out did the companies that wanted to sell them reach out to you, or did you reach out to the companies to sell your kits?
So the first was Ratrig, and they came to me. They say that they told me that they have some people asking always the same length of extrusion, and they found my project, and then they were interested in selling my things. So they were the first. Then I had a lot of talk with Orlando also from Ultra Makers, and he did and still do a lot of things for the project today. And I think it was the second one. And then Maker Parts and Blackford around the same time. But I didn't approach those guys. They came to me, and that's crazy. I have a list of people waiting to sell the burner. So hope soon.
Yeah, there's going to be more and more. I mean, it's definitely going to grow. And I know I've talked to Orlando from All3D, and he's going to be adding a lot of extrusion in house. So that way, well, he's not making. He's ordering a bunch, so it's in stock at all times for people.
Yeah.
Because none of the extrusion, he gets it from LDO. Yes. So Jason from LDO, he's getting it made, and that comes from China. So usually it's best to order as much as you can at one time, because there's a discount.
He's replacing sofa by extrusion.
Yeah, he's going to order a whole boatload of extrusion. Someone says I should print the BIV cube, and oh man, there's so many printers I want to build. I finally ordered a Delta. So there's a Delta sitting down here that I got for $250 US, and it's awesome. Tom Jackson recommended it. It prints really well. I want to throw a Duet on there, and I want to, get better arms for it, because it's pretty cheap arms, little plastic, heads on the arms, which again, that's just rinky dinky. I think if I throw $200 in parts and then the board, it's going to be an awesome Delta. But Core XY, I'm stuck. The guys at Railcore have just they've wine and dined me without having to do anything. It had that same feel as Bear, where it's just like a bunch of just nerds are hanging out making cool stuff and then talking printers and going like, how can we make it better?
Yeah. And the Railcore is beautiful. I really like the way they manage the bed. It's really nice.
Yeah, there's some ridiculous things in there. Which Delta, Don? I got the Anycubic Linear Plus. It is the bargain Delta. I mean, it's a Delta with linear rails for $250 US shipped. And it prints 300 millimeters at the max Z height, and I think 250 or 240 in the radius, in the diameter. So ridiculously good price for a Delta. Back to the GT 16 or 20 topic. It's 20. So Francisco, good question. So if you switch the pulley So this side, the one that's directly connected to the motor from 16 to 20, you will change the E-steps. It'll go from, I think, 100 to 80, if I remember correctly. But if you change the idler side, because it's not the driven side, that doesn't matter. You can change that from 16 to 20. Unfortunately, this is aligned for 20. So if you switch to 16, you'll actually change the alignment.
Sorry.
Let's see.
So yeah, Andrea asks about CFD simulation.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have money or software to make a CFD simulation, but some guys on the Discord helped me on that. And we did some simulation, but you cannot simulate perfectly a printed part with CFD because you have all those. And today, unfortunately, there is no easy way to do that. So real testing is very important. There is material free that came with a sensor inside the hot end to measure really the temperature at the heat break site. So that's really important, I think. That's really good testing. I did some testing that was not in a free level with cooling down the hot end too, with a special G code and a script to read the lugs and temperature, but it's not the most reliable method to do it. So yeah, real testing and CFD is you cannot remove one of them. You have to do both.
Yeah, I've always been more of a proponent because I've seen, because Prusa had Anisys, you know, one of those like $10,000 softwares or $100,000 softwares that does air tests, and as you can see, they did the test and it said that this works, but in real life it works opposite of what their test showed. So I call it the candle test seems to be or
yeah, the problem is that we have also a lot of perturbation because CFD doesn't take a lot of parameter. You have the bed that is heating, you have the head that is moving, all those stuff, you have to enter them in the simulation. It's really, really hard. So yeah, real testing is very important.
And that's where you guys come in.
Hope so.
you buy you build your printer and you test it. And that's the fun part about the community. There's so many people willing to test and try new things that it's pretty inspiring watching problem solving happen. Like, you know, one day someone has a problem issue and the next day someone solved it. And that seems to be, you know, the nice thing. It's never stalled. Like the Prusa community is awesome at that. Like we're always coming together, finding an issue, coming up with a solution to it. And there's multiple people coming up with a solution. I think someone else had like when the filament sensor wasn't working that well on the Prusas, everyone, like 9 people came up with different indirect sensor mods. So
I'll come back in a sec. Someone is asking for my yellow head
the little horse head
I have, so I will show you. One sec.
I like the VW bus myself. Yeah, the results come from the simulation for sure. And
so that's my head. Can you see it?
Yes.
It's paper. And we did that with my girlfriend. And yeah, it's paper. You can purchase online some design and you can make it. So yeah. So my logo comes from that. My little image on Facebook and Discord and so on.
I've always wanted to make those and use them for photo shoots, but I'm lazy. And I thought I could print them, and then I'm like, none of my printers are big enough to print them. So I got lazy again.
That's quite big.
I keep telling myself I'm going to buy a bigger printer. It just never happens. I'm waiting for that bare 300 by 300 by 500.
Yeah.
Or the 500 by 500 by 500 bear. He always thought, so Jared thought it was always a mega print. And I'm like, Matt would be a mega print. Oh, that would be amazing. So let me see here. Someone said something. Let's see, Andrea. And the thing is, I'm not Filament Frenzy. Big Boy Bear would be epic. Yes, Big Boy Bear would be epic. Highly agree. Back to the simulation stuff. I believe in simulations. I think they're fantastic. The downfall being is I don't have the software, and looking at the results, real world versus the simulation was so different. So it's definitely down to how well you simulate it, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, no, it's not easy to read the results.
We get this on our race cars all the time. You model a piece, run the simulation, you're 100% convinced it will not break, and then when you're racing, it breaks. Yep, that's there's a simulation is amazing to get you to a point. Then you gotta do it, and then you gotta make sure it doesn't actually break in the real world. And especially when you're in NASA and you go from metric to imperial, and you're like, why didn't I make the spaceship land on the moon?
Yeah.
Well, you simulated it wrong. So, Albie just ordered the blue frame. That blue frame looks. I wish. What's funny was I asked Jason about the colored frames, and then all of a sudden, colored frames are out there. And Jason asked me one day, "Why haven't you ordered a colored frame?" I'm like, everyone got the colors I wanted. There was so many cool colors, and I'm like, man. Plus, I bought. A lot of people don't know I bought like 9 meters of V-slot extrusion, so I can cut them myself and just make stuff. So I might have too much extrusion, and I'm just slowing down a little bit, saving some money for the rail core, because that's going to be after the Mark 3S. That'll be next. So that'll be a good, that's a good deviation. We can go to the Mark 3S for like the last 15-20 minutes here. So Prusa Prusa had a wonderful launch. Nobody got their Mark 3S ahead of time. So the Mark 3S is official as of today. If you haven't seen the Facebook or the Twitter or the YouTube, or we have a new Y belt tensioner, we have a new extruder, we have a new filament sensor, and if you had a MMU2, we have an MMU2S, and the MMU2S is free for everyone that ordered an MMU2. And the MMU2S comes with a bunch of extruder mods and things. So none of the printed parts, but for free, you get the sensor, the door sensor, the thingy. Yeah, so you get the Mark 3S basically for free if you have an MMU2, because the MMU2S needs the new MK3S and the Mark 2.5S. And I know the first thing asked was, one, will the Bondtech change? And I bet you, Greg, you've probably been asked, are you going to add an indirect filament sensor mod based on the Prusa Mark 3 and 2.5S?
Yeah, I will add the new sensor, the new indirect sensor. Yeah.
And
sure. It's not too difficult to do, I think. Okay. I think that's the only modification I will do to support the Mark 3S. I think I don't see. I think the rest is already implemented in the beer, and somehow some stuff are better for me. So yeah, for now. I mean, yeah, I think only the indirect sensor needs to be added.
Yeah, if you guys haven't seen, the big changes were, so the whole thing comes apart. So it's actually a lot like this. 3 screws, and this thing comes in a clamshell, and you can get to the whole extruder, the whole hot end. You can, the motor's over here, so you can work on the motor. The Mark 3S is actually very similar in that it comes completely apart in half. And they fix some things. They didn't fix the filament path. So Greg already checked that. The filament path is still off. I don't think we'll ever have a Prusa with a perfectly straight filament path ever. So it still has the Bondtech gears. They did move the motor closer to the frame, or the axis, the belts, so that way it gets less wobble and vibration, which is something both you did and Zerbo did. I don't know if they changed the motor position. It looks pretty similar. The new filament sensor is an IR sensor, so no more lasers, because lasers are for sharks. Lasers are not for printers, unless it's a laser printer. Then that's different. Yeah. But if it's an FDM printer, we don't want any dang lasers. I think that's gonna be my next T-shirt I make. No more lasers on printers. And
I think GLTX found a good way to use the laser with the indirect filament sensor. I'm wondering why they didn't implement this. Well, maybe because of dust, or do you know exactly?
Yeah, so the failure rate is really high on those filament sensors. So they seem to degrade over time. And one of the major issues, and a lot of people notice this, they're like, I put my printer together and my filament sensor is dead. Well, if you plug it in wrong, if you put that wire in the wrong spot, it actually fries the whole board, the filament sensor board. So it's temperamental to the point where they did test the indirect filament sensor. They used JLTX's indirect filament sensor mod, and they put it on their farm, printing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a couple months, and it still wasn't 100% reliable. There was still either the sensor would die or dust build up or whatever, because you have to clean it. There's maintenance involved with it. The way they're going now with the IR sensor is it's just a dummy switch. So you have an IR sensor that's like this, and then a piece moves and it goes boop. Oh, yep, there's something there. Oh, there's something there, because a ball bearing's inside the extruder and it moves over and pushes. It's pretty cool. The reliability went from their testing on the farm went from, for me, I consider the filament sensor to have a, again, 30% success rate globally among users. It went up to 100%. It just works because it's just dumb. It just waits for something to get in the way of it, and once it gets out of the way of it, it knows there's no filament. So pretty smart and easy. So the laser sensor, had to go. And I think the cost too, like, why have all this money for a laser sensor when we can go to a 10-cent IR sensor?
Yeah, I think those sensors are hard to get also, because the company that makes them is not really is selecting clients they want to work with, so it's a bit hard to get those sensors too.
Yep. Does it detect jams? No. No, it doesn't. But neither really did the laser one. So that was the thing, is I think we all really wanted the laser sensor to work because it did things. It can track motion, it can check for jams, it can do other things, and they were going to incorporate more things, but they could never get the reliability to the point where it was practical. I mean, a filament sensor needs to work 99.9% of the time. The laser sensor itself doesn't work 99.9% of the time, so they were never going to be able to keep it viable for the masses. And remember, they make their printers for their farm, so they're printing with 500 machines all day, every day, printing parts. And they tested all of those things, and that was what they came up with that worked the best and didn't have any failures. So if that's the way the route they went, I'm at least happy that we no longer have to have that sensor that failed all the time.
We had someone that was asking about Faizan Malik. He asked about what I'm doing out of 3D printing stuff. So I'm full on the burr today. I'm doing a burr every day. and before that, I was working for other companies in engineering for testing software and making automated tests framework. So it was not really in the mechanical sides. but I have always made some mechanical stuff. I had I learned about mechanical at school also. I did also electrical school also to learn electronics, and so yeah. But today I'm full on number, yeah, with pleasure.
Uh-oh. Filament Frenzy. Tom Jackson wants to know, is a 300 by 300 by 300 bear a viable project?
I don't know. I cannot answer. Yeah, it's. I think it's feasible, but we need quite of tests to make sure it's good in terms of especially moving the bed. I think we can use larger beds and a bit stronger motor, and I think we can achieve it. But yeah, it will take a bit of time to be sure that really works.
Yeah, because if you Tom, the couple of things with going Prusa bigger width and length. One, these rods got to go. You can't use 8mm rods over this length. Any longer we go is just going to be a fail. And the same thing on the y-axis. If we start extending the y-axis further and further with these smooth rods, it's just going to be, we're either have to go to linear rail, which is going to be a really expensive, because there isn't, linear rail's odd. So Highwind makes like the best linear rail. To put linear rail on this from Highwind is like $600. It is not cheap to go linear rail. Then your next step down, there isn't like a middle grade. There isn't like $100 linear rail. I mean, there's some. It just goes to this Chinese stuff. So, you could do really thick rod, like Chris just mentioned that on there. You can go 10 or 12mm rod. It ends up just looking like a super Creality printer, because that's where again, for me, when I look at a bigger Prusa, I go, yeah, that's just a CR10, because this extrusion material makes really good rails. It doesn't bend. It has a good deflection angle. I mean, it's pretty straight. So it's no longer a Prusa anymore for me. It doesn't have the rods. It doesn't have, you're adding a lot more metal plates and stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, Chris, you were buying an oddball size at 10mm rods. Yeah, so it's just, I believe they have to go. If you want a bigger Prusa, you're going to go, Core XY. That's just me, or CR10. I'm waiting for Greg to make it with linear rails. So that's my hope and dream, is just to wait for him to make something of his own that's like the Prusa.
The Prusa.
The Prusa, yep, the Bayer Prusa, where it's yeah, and the weight increase would be significant going to 12mm rods. I mean, that Z-axis is going to work really hard trying to move 12mm rod up and down. And then there's also, how wide do you space it? And it's a fun project. So, yeah, Voron is also, that's the one, the Voron from Rat Rig.
Yeah. No, it's the Voron is not from Rat Rig.
Oh, is it? Who makes the? Oh, that's right. The Voron's that really like super sexy looking printer.
Yeah.
It's like all the parts are all like super pretty looking. I've seen that thing before. Oh man, Francisco, connectors. You don't know how bad I want connectors on on any extruder. There's a guy, Greg, do you know that guy who makes like that super tank Prusa and he uses like a Cat 5 cable and the homemade?
I think so. Yeah, I think I see what, but I don't remember the name of the guy.
Yeah, he makes his own board that has Cat 5e connectors, so he runs everything just on a little dongle board. I would love connectors, but I think that's on Prusa's end. Prusa really needs to do that on their next printer, because then we just buy all the parts with the connectors on it for $700 versus going home and making our own. Whoa!
There is a crazy guy now on the Discord that is developing something with a USB connector, with USB-C, with power going inside the USB and all the data. That could be really interesting. So you just plug your extruder with a USB cable, and that's it.
That's pretty amazing. I want to see a Bluetooth extruder, but
oh no, I hate Bluetooth.
Just put a giant battery pack up here, so that way it can be wireless. The technology of the future. So yeah, that basically covers everything. I mean, we talked about the frame and the parts a little bit. We talked about what's next. We talked about the Bondtech extruder, the Mark 3S, 2.5S. Talk about filament sensors. What do you want to talk about, Greg? Is there anything you want to say or?
No, thank you. Thank you for the chat, and thank you for the community for on Facebook, on Discord. I think it's everyone here is helping me a lot, and everyone of the community has its little part in the bird frame. So thank you very much for that. I think.
No problem.
The best.
You guys keep me out of the drugs. I mean, if I didn't buy printers, I'd just be buying drugs, I think. So I mean, Surprise and Delight just said I'm becoming the Joe Rogan of 3D printing. I do have the bald head. My beard's a little bit bigger than Joe Rogan's, but he's a tougher looking guy. I think he could beat me up. So can I be like the bald Bob Ross of 3D printing? I'm pretty tame. I just have a big mouth. So I posted the link in the description to Greg's GitHub, which should have all the links for everything. Should have the links to all the suppliers that sell your stuff.
Yep.
Has all the lists to all the parts you have. Has a list to all the little tweaks and things you've learned in the building process. All the thank yous, and of course, it also has the links to your Facebook group, because you also have a Facebook group.
Yes.
And I think it also has a link to the Discord as well, right? The Wasteland.
Yeah. Both.
I will talk more about the Prusa Mark 3S after Greg. Greg wants to build his cool stuff. He doesn't want to bother himself with the Mark 3S. He's like, shh, I already got my Bear extruder. It's already cooler.
Yeah.
And he does have a Patreon as well. So if you want to donate to the project. So if you buy a Bear frame from one of his many sellers, you get a small kickback. So that's one way to support Greg. The other way to support Greg is to hop onto the forums and the Facebook groups and, chat and, be part of the project. And the other one, of course, is his Patreon. So, I am not a Patreon of Greg, so I need to change that. I just realized.
But
I haven't, I actually,
so
yeah, I bought like 90 frames. So we're pretty good. We're pretty good.
We're pretty good. Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, but those of us who just bought a Mark 2.5S upgrade can't build the Bear extruder. Yeah, just wait a little bit. Hey, Mark. So yeah, Greg, thank you so much for jumping in, explaining a little bit about the Bear project and why I like it so much and why the community likes it so much. So I hope y'all out in the YouTube verse have learned a little bit more why you see me showing this off so much. It's not because I don't love my Mark III stock. I have a stock one over here, and it prints great. But for us that are compulsive in making our printer cooler and sexier, this is pretty nice. It's Valentine's Day this Thursday, and I don't have a Valentine's Day. I'll be at an art show with this printer right here. I didn't mention that, but this Thursday I'll be at an art show, and I'm bringing my Bear, and the Bear this exact Bear will be at Murph at the Bondtech booth, and I'll be at the Bondtech booth. Yeah. So you will see the full Bear printing live during Murph with the Bondtech extruder. So, I don't know if I mentioned that to you. I think I've mentioned it online before, but Bondtech invited me to be in their booth. They're like, well, if you want to hang out in our booth and bring your printer, I'm like, sold. So, Greg, thank you.
We would have a beer at Murph. That's good.
Perfect.
Because I kind of drain. So.
Oh well, I'll represent Bears best. I'll keep my mouth shut. not make anyone angry. I've already pissed off E3D today. I think I'll just be nice to everybody at Murph, and then when I leave, I can be mean again. So, thank you so much, Greg. I'm going to continue going with some questions and talk about the market. Thank you so
much, everybody. Thank you so much, Chris, for the video. So, it was really cool.
Anytime.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, Greg. Oh man, Harry, I have no idea how you can keep up with the events. I know so Murph is just like the world's biggest rep rap festival. And they have ERF, the East Coast rep rap, and I don't know if there's a WERF. Is there a WERF, West Coast rep rap festival? So yeah, good questions. What discussions are going on with the Bondtech extruder? So we have the STLs. We definitely can make the same thing happen. Whatever Prusa's done with the filament sensor can be done on this, and it might just be replacing the back end, because that was one of the nice design pieces. The whole filament sensor part's only on one end, so it shouldn't be that hard. So it'd be just one piece, some tomfoolery, and we should be able to move that. But that's going to be in the design process, so we'll be bugging Greg. And we need the step files. That would help a lot. So there, the one thing that a lot of people don't know, so the MMU2S has a this little box that sits on the side. It measures when the door opens and closes, so it knows it's engaged the Bondtech gears. So we'll have to try to replicate that. So once someone from the community that's part of the conversation with this gets an Mark 2S, Mark 3S, we can try to reverse engineer. So there might even be again, printable change might work. Might be able to mount something on top. There are options. So, oh, excuse me. So we'll be waiting for Greg to figure out what he does to his, and then once Greg figures out that, we'll just throw it on here and call it a day. Yeah, we're sneaky like that. So I just want to talk a little bit about the Mark III and Mark 2.5S. It looks like a really good upgrade, and Prusa made it free for anyone who had an MMU2 because they made MMU2S. All the details for the Mark 3S should be on their website and blog. And I think their blog is prusaprinters.org. I think that's their blog page. I could be wrong. Someone find it for me. I'm really bad at searching for things. Which is my computer's over here and my camera's over here. And I'm just bad at searching things. Whole new extruder. I like some of the stuff. I really do enjoy the fact that it comes apart just like the Bondtech extruder. And you can get to all the bits. I think that's going to help out every single person. Here we go. We got 3 of them. 3 people jumped in and got it in. There are some alignment fixes. There are still, I guess, a few bugs. They still didn't change the alignment of the extruder path, the filament path. So we can't have everything. We can't have everything. The cooling looks like they've improved it a little bit more. It still has the, what is that? They still have the Dyson port, which I'm not a fan of because the Noctua fan is a little bit underpowered for it. But all in all, what is it? A $40 upgrade with all printed parts? And then if you don't want the printed parts, it's like $15. So it's pretty insanity. I'll definitely be adding $20, $19.99. There we go. I think that's a super fair price. If it was anything more than $30, I think we would have seen pitchforks. And then if you bought it in February, it's I think it's January 28th was the cutoff. So anything February 1st. Yeah, shipping, you know. Uh, plus $400 shipping. Oh, that would suck. No, and they did it good. I read the article. I even sent a message to Joseph saying, "Hey, that's a really good article." They touched on things. I won't go into textured bed sheets because they did touch it in the thing, and they're doing more testing on it. So they didn't promise anything, which is good. They didn't promise us a date on those. I'm happy they're no longer even touching it. What else did they talk about? Soon, yes, soon. The Mark III's makes everything round. So I'm excited though. I know I'm rambling a bit here. I'm a little loopy, but it's been I didn't go to bed till 4 a.m. and woke up at 7 and started de-icing the driveway. So eventually TM. That is the typical format there though. 7x7 was mentioned in the article that they are working on, and they're going to make it better. So they're just going to basically move around where the magnets are. So that's on the list. I've broken my printer so many times. I have so many spare parts. I highly recommend. I always recommend having a big parts bag. I'm much more organized than I was. I've got parts for days. Some of the stuff isn't organized. Like right here is just a box of random stuff. There's test prints and Gates GT2 belt. But what's holding them up on the 7x7 firmware? One, they want to work around the magnets. So they need to program it to go to certain points. And I believe the points... what is that thing? The points are automatically figured out based on... So if you do 7x7, I believe the way the firmware works is you mark where the first point is, where the furthest point here is, and the furthest point back is, and then it does the mapping. So 7x7 just calculates based on that. So I could be wrong. So they need to go in there programming each one. So they're hard coded. They're hard coding each point. Oh, don't have broken parts. I actually just found out that I have a broken carriage piece right here. So I need to fix that on here. I broke it. Thank goodness I have more of this filament. The reason I believe they're not just including the 7x7 is because why redo it? I'm guessing is... I'm sorry you didn't see me go online. Yeah, the MMU backlog is backlogged because they're sending all the MMU2s as MMU2Ss. So the reason they've kind of halted shipping is they're just waiting to put all the good stuff in there. So that way you're not getting the old stuff and then them sending you new stuff. So now you know why your MMU2 order has been backed up a little bit. Hey, Orlando. Chris Stahl just to confirm that I was correct, and that you're saying I'm correct, that it's based on first point, and then it does the mapping. And Bruce is starting on his rail core now. See, this makes me jelly. I really want to get that rail core, but yeah. Mark, I like how you said that. They think that the pinned is influenced by magnets. Yeah, the biggest issue with the MMU2 on the Prusa is the one thing we're adding that works, which is that filament sensor. And because it doesn't know that filament is loaded, you get all these skipped layers because it thinks it's loaded. It doesn't, but now it should be, just like the Zero Beast firmware with the firmware working, and it should be much better. And I will test it immediately as soon as I've already gonna start printing the parts for the stock Mark III to go to the Mark III's. So I'll be ready for my MMU2S parts. Jared, the 7x7 works great on mine. with and without magnets. But they've tested it and they say that there's a variance. So I think that they have already decided that they're not going to change their idea. And whether they're right or wrong, the thing is, working around the magnets won't make it worse. Theoretically, it should make it better. So I'll let them work with that. So the good news is the community continues to improve that 7x7 firmware, and it's available for us, unofficially. Downfall being is they just sent 3.5.3 today. Chris, he's not warning you about 7x7. So what happened was, it's the custom firmware, depending on who makes it and how it's downloaded, there's bugs. So like one of the ones that I make for the Bondtech can bug out and it's an issue. So he's just warning that custom firmware is not warranted. So if you start messing around with your firmware and something poopy happens, that's on you. So that's why he says babysit it. Just make sure that the person who, coded it and you first put it in, it isn't crashing into the bed and doing crazy nonsense. So, which is as the owner of the company, he's correct, because, if I made a 7x7 firmware, believe me, you want to babysit it, because I have no idea what I'm doing in there. Changing lengths of things, I've got that down pretty good, but order. I want to order it, and Mark wants to order. Everyone wants to order. It's such a cool printer. I really want Prusa to make a Core XY. That way I can not have to spend $1,500. I bet you it'd be like $1,200. But I do want a Duet. I do. $200 for shipping for that much weight, I think, is pretty fair. It's hefty, and it's a lot of stuff. Ooh, good question. I haven't installed 3.5.3. Yeah, the Delta's super fun. So surprise and delight, when did you get your Mark III? Because one of the bonuses of the Mark III was the initial 3 months of laundry list of issues. And one of those is the crashing in the bed. But they added a thing that if it does crash in the bed, there's stall guard on the Z-axis. So it'll hit the bed and then it'll stall out and it'll be like, oh, error. Oh, yeah, that's right. 3.5.3 is only for the Mark III's. Anycubic Linear Plus 2.0. Yes, I have it. It's just sitting on the floor. I'm waiting for... I'm going to put a Bondtech extruder on it. So I need to order another regular Bondtech. I need to order a new board. So I'm either going to go Duet or Marlin 2.0. So I'm waiting for a new board to come in. And I am waiting for... I need to anneal some HTPLA parts for it. So I'm just waiting on a few things. Yes, it's an Anycubic Linear Delta Plus. They might even say Costal on there. I don't know, but I know it's an Anycubic Linear Plus 2.0. I think I got it from like 3dprintingstore.com. I do have Sunans on all of my printers. Yep, there it is. 3D Printers Online Store. That's my favorite store because it's not GearBest. They still have really good deals. And you can order from whatever warehouse you want. It doesn't always ship from the warehouse you want. I ordered mine from the German warehouse, and it did ship from Germany. And I think it was like $30 for shipping, which is whatever. The linear rails are smooth. I do recommend looking at... Highwind has a guide on how to disassemble a linear rail and how to grease it properly and how to reassemble it. I would highly recommend cleaning the rods and re-greasing them properly. So let's see. Checking out a board. It's for Marlin 32. Remram. Oh, that looks fun. Oh, and it looks like it takes the same, whatever those things are called, the same car fuses. Fuses. How are the Synons compared? Much better. They're louder, mildly, but the cooling is far superior. So I recommend them. Let's see. Let's see. Justin 3D. I believe it's the A99. I could be wrong. Let me dig on my phone. Oh wait, actually I've got one. Should have one in a drawer here because I have a drawer of electronic parts. There's a Noctua. Here we go. Here's my Synon fan collection. Oh, that's a Noctua. Here's a Synon fan. And I took the sticker off of it. Here's more Synon fans. Yeah, MF40100V11000U G99. So yeah, that is the 3-wire 5-volt 7,000 RPM. Yeah, it's for her Valentine's Day. She's always wanted a Delta printer. Oh, we're at 2 hours. Well, then I'm going to call it a day. I am going to. Yeah, I did buy them all. I always buy spares. Remember, that's my rule. Because if you don't have spares and something breaks, you have to wait. And I hate having to wait. I have spare mini INC retro boards. I've got spare mini Rambo boards. I've got spare PS power supplies. Don't forget heat bed thermistors. That's one that everyone always forgets. Spare heat bed thermistors. I need to try out Clipper in general. I really want to put Clipper on this guy. Oh, man. Yeah, it's which spares should you have? Like, man, Bondtech ball bearings. Yeah, you should definitely carry. I did order a spare set of Bondtech ball bearings. I have spare the balls for the MMU2. This side is my spare parts area, and there's spare Z-axis motors, spare X and Y-axis motors. Yeah, definitely thermistors for your hot end. That is one thing that dies quite often. So I have. Oh. This is my favorite spare box. Spare shrouds in case you melt one, because you never know. And I print them in all the colors, so gotta have spare shrouds. I haven't melted one in a while. I used to melt them quite often. You can then flash the USB to serial control chip. Oh, man. Yeah, Linear Advance 1.5 would be amazing. Ooh, as a starter, Amazon has a really good kit for M3 screws and M3 nuts. And I also recommend Nylox. So you want everything from 6mm all the way up to 45mm, I believe, length. So, yeah, you want all of those. And then for this, you want M5s. And the M5s are only 8mm, 10mm, and something millimeter. I'm really bad at remembering things. And T-nuts. You need T-nuts. Lots of T-nuts. I don't have a link for that one. I just know on Amazon, just look up like M3 hex socket head assortment. Now that I've learned how to do firmware more, not well, I'm going to mess with that INC Retro. So that's on my list. I'll be a special bear. Oh, the MBL fade. The MBL fade worked fine. The motors didn't. They're the T8x2 motors didn't work. It's a very crude. It was a forced fade, so it's a little crude. I think Clipper has mesh by the living fade built in too. So yeah, I need to make a shopping list. And there'll be I haven't been able to fully test the Peak one. So this is my first nozzle X print, and it turned out odd. So just super odd. But this has the tighter palm nuts on it too. So extrusion's a little odd. So, all right, I'm going to head out. You guys enjoy. Check out, rewatch this thing and learn all the cool stuff about Greg. Someone just posted Greg's Patreon. Check out Greg's Patreon. I need to sign up for that. And someone just posted some stuff there. I would love to get community support on the retro board, because that would be the easiest way to put silent steppers on a Mark IIs. So good night. Enjoy. Stay out of trouble. Check out the bear. Growl? I don't know. What do bears do? Bye, Olaf. You didn't miss the whole thing. When I hit the stop button, you can play it from the beginning. All right. Good night, everybody.